Hey, what's up, guys? This is TJ, and this is the Show Me Better in Real Life podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to help all of us to be able to grow together. And one of the ways that we're able to do that is by you telling me what it is that you would like to hear. So we know that a few of the things that this podcast is about is from the perspective of a father, a son, a grandpa. But that's not all this is. It's not just a podcast about men. It's actually something that is geared to be able to affect the entire family. And so maybe you were looking to see what the perspective of a grandpa might be. Maybe your perspective may be from the daughter of a father, and you want to know how to navigate through certain situations when it comes to that dynamic of a relationship. Wherever you are, we want to be able to hit you directly with that. And so that's the purpose of this video. So if you can do me a favor and TikTok, on Instagram, any place where there's DMs or an inbox or a comment section, I want to encourage you to go ahead and leave a comment, drop a DM, so that we could go ahead and approach a bunch of different things. We're going to be having conversations with different types of people with different walks of life. I'm going to be telling you about my life experiences and the perspective that I have coming from where I'm coming from. But I'd also love to be able to include where you are, because one of the gifts and the beauty in community is the fact that there's different walks of life, different perspectives, different questions that can be asked and answered. And so I'm hoping that you'll help me be able to do that. What we're looking to do is to be better together. And so join this journey with me. Hey, what's up, guys? This is TJ, and this is the Show Me Better in Real Life podcast. And the goal of this podcast is to address a whole bunch of different types of things that could potentially both of us to grow. And so for you, the listener, thank you so much for taking the time to click on the podcast. Man, one of the reasons why I am so passionate about getting a podcast like this out is because, like, in so many ways, podcasts have been a major part of my growth. I want to be able to be a part of that. It seems like that there has been like a self-improvement revival, if that's the right terminology, to where you have seen in so many different like media outlets, there being a mass encouragement for us to look at our inward parts as well as our past, and taking the time and doing the work to be able to improve on ourselves. And it just seems like as a society, and maybe it's just a millennial thing, because I know that like for a long time that whether it's therapy or trying to go through some process of like self-improvement has not been something that's been super popular. One of the things that I've noticed, like especially since COVID shut down the world a few years back, is that it gave a lot of us the opportunity to sit alone with our thoughts. And I don't know about you, but one of the things that has been a challenge for me up until a few years ago has been sitting alone with my thoughts and really making myself accountable to my parts that have been played in the areas of my life that are not as easy as what I would like for them to be. And so this podcast is kind of like me fleshing out loud like my thoughts, my spaces where I could use some improvement, like almost revealing to both myself and the world like what it is that I need help with. And then one of the parts that's going to be a part of this podcast is like reaching out to people who seems like that they at least have it better together in certain areas than I do, so that possibly I can ask some questions, and then we can learn together, we can grow together. And then even the guests themselves, what I'm going to be like encouraging them to do is to like share with me some of the questions that they have. And if I don't have the answer to the question, then maybe some of you guys do. And that's really what I mean by like being on this journey together, growing together, is that we utilize like I'm gonna use a phrase that we use at work: social capital. We utilize social capital to be able to grow together, and be able to learn from each other. Um, because I really think that what keeps people from being as successful as they could be is that they don't have access to the parts of their life that they lack. And once they get that access, then it's up to us. Over the years, as I have been working on myself, there's a couple of things that I've really noticed about myself. I guess the place that I want to start is the fact that, like, growing up, like, I come from a place of, or a family of educated people. The whole family has like graduated from college, with the exception of me. I went to ministry school and I did finish ministry school. What I went to school for is for ministry, to learn how to minister the gospel in a wide variety of different ways. Uh, as a part of that, there was also leadership training that was involved in that, that helped to, once you got into the ministry, that not only were you able to delegate responsibility, but you were also able to follow direction from those that would be in charge of the ministries that you may be a part of. And so, anyway, I come from a family where they're all really smart people, and I feel like I'm also a fairly smart guy, and that has kind of like played a role in some of the relationships that I've had, even in the way that I communicate with people. Something that I was fairly well known for is, if somebody needed advice on something, then I was kind of like the advice guy. And I'm sure you probably know someone like that if it's not you. And so that has been something that I have always like prided myself in, is that I'm the advice guy, right? And so I had never really run into anybody that had, at least that they had openly expressed, had a problem with me just being the advice guy. And it's not because like I went to years and years of school, or because I had some sort of expertise in counseling or anything. Because after all, I was only a teenager whenever, this kind of first started happening. Um, but what I felt it was kind of like a God, well, not kind of, like a God-given gift to be able to like help walk people through like the different life situations, kind of seen as the like unofficial like advice guy or whatever. And so sometimes that has been something that has both helped people, but then also sometimes revealed things about myself from the times that I'm attempting to help people, or share with somebody some wisdom that I feel like supposed to share with them. And so there was actually this one time, actually right before my 15-year-old son was born, like just a couple of weeks before, um, I was working at Sam's Club, and we were pushing carts, and we were busted it really hard for a couple of hours during like a rush time. And this was before like the cart machines where you just hook it up and then press the button. Like, we actually had to physically put a rope uh, at the back of the cart and keep stacking the carts, and like physically pull them. And P.S. I was in the best shape of my life when I was a cart pusher, or I guess you could say cart puller. Anyway, so we had just got through. Me and a coworker, we kind of went out in teams because it was a fairly big parking lot, and I start to have this conversation with uh, my coworker, and he finds out that I am in ministry school at the time. And so he starts asking me questions, and I don't know if you've ever met somebody or been having a conversation with somebody that they are attempting to they're attempting to ask you questions, but it's not necessarily because they want an answer to the questions. It's more because they feel a type of way about whatever the subject matter is, and so they want to try to trip you up, almost as if, not necessarily that they're attacking you, but like they're like trying to say, boom, I got another one of those people that think this way. And so that was kind of like the vibe of the conversation. Like we were having the conversation, and this guy was asking me questions, and I was answering the questions. And then the way that I was in the conversation, I started to kind of direct the conversation to faith. And I started to share my faith. I started to share some of the reasons why I believe Jesus is the only way to heaven. And so there's a quick pause in the conversation because for whatever reason, he had to go inside or something along those lines, but he came back out and we talked for a few more minutes. And he's like, you're really arrogant. And it caught me off guard because I had never had anybody at least out loud say, you're arrogant. And, I asked him why. And he said, just because you are so sure you're just putting off that you don't think that there's any way that you could be wrong. And, you know, I sat and thought about that response that he gave me for a period of time, and ask myself, is that arrogant, or is it just being led to believe the way that you believe because of evidence that's sufficient for you? And so, we talked a little bit more, and I worked hard at not like completely rejecting what he was saying, trying to be not only open minded, but also leave room for conversations in the future that may lead to a more fruitful result. But it's something that over the years I have thought about, and it also has helped to shape some of the conversations that I have with people about everything. Um, and if you've ever had a conversation with me, especially about something that is something that we could potentially be disagreeing on, you might notice that I may say something along the lines of, I'm not saying that this is exactly how this thing is happening, but these things lead us to believe XYZ. And I really feel like that was part of uh, what has shaped the way that I respond to a lot of things. Um, and it hasn't shaped my faith. It hadn't shaped like what I think about Jesus, or it hadn't changed anything. Like when it comes to what I believe, just the way that I have conversations with people. There's multiple times where I found myself in places where when I was younger, I would say whatever it is that came to my mind. And then if somebody was offended by it, then I would say something like, well, I'm just shooting it straight. Or I would say, well, uh, it's not my fault that you're offended. Just real gaslighty comments, um, as if the person that's in front of me is an argument to be won. And I think that particular interaction, along with other like interactions that I've had with people, have helped me to realize that even in the disagreements that we have, and I could be 100% right, or 99.999% right about certain things, um, but I still have to treat people as if they're people. And so one of the things that I have found myself consistently working towards is analyzing what it is that is going on. And I guess an easier way of being able to say that is like I've been working on my situational awareness. The fact that when you're dealing with people, you're dealing with human beings. Um, and in that humanity, like there are pieces where you have to submit to the love that you have for that person as a human being, or as a family member, or as a friend. Uh, you also have to use wisdom in the way that you navigate through some of those conversations. And it's not because they have control over you, but it's because you care about them as a person. You don't want to just come out trashing whatever it is that you're talking about. um, because then you remove yourself from the space of like having the responsibility to care for who's in front of you. Um, I also think about, am I being arrogant in the way that I'm thinking about certain things? Or am I doing the work of researching what's what's being talked about, or being honest and saying, hey man, I can't speak to XYZ thing because I just genuinely don't have enough experience. I don't have enough information to make a solid claim on these things. But then not just stopping there, but saying, I'm willing to go back and check this thing out so that we can continue this conversation. Um, I think there are so many things that get in the way of healthy, fruitful relationships. Um, and I think if we're honest, I'll say in the culture that we're in, it is popular to say, make a claim, and then not really have anything to base that claim off of, and then say, you're responsible for acknowledging the way that I feel about something, or you're responsible to subject yourself to this truth without any type of experience with it, just taking my word off of it. Um, and then if they don't, then almost kind of like pushing those people away. And it's hard. It's something that's kind of hard to think about. You know, one of the ways that it has been challenging for me is in raising my kids. Uh, it would be super easy, and man, I've been guilty of this, for me to, because my kids being kids have rubbed me the wrong way, or made me frustrated, or gotten in the way of um, me doing something that's going to help benefit the entire family. Now all of a sudden, unless you're doing exactly what I've told you to do, I'm always in a bad mood. There have been times where I've been guilty of the same thing in my marriage, where I'm like, I have done all of these things, and so you should just do what I ask you to do, because I'm sacrificing myself, maybe even in some ways that you're not even asking me to sacrifice myself. Uh, there was a period of time whenever my wife, and some of you guys know this story just from past podcasts, the Tyler Gang podcast that my wife and I did last year, that hopefully soon we'll be getting restarted. But we've got this podcast and her podcast that she'll be starting here soon. But anyway, so one of the one of the things that I I have I'm currently working on is allowing room for the humanity of those around me, which honestly kind of puts me in a tough spot. And the reason why I feel like it's tough is because, like, you may go through, like, a person may go through a point in life where they are tapped into themselves and the way that they feel on certain things. Um, and then one day you wake up and realize that other people are in the world too. Um, and over the years, I found myself realizing in each one of the different situations that I'm navigating through, whether it's with my wife, whether it is with my kids, that I have found myself putting myself in their shoes and attempting to like make a shift based on what I found through putting myself in their shoes. So, like, I have a 12-year-old son, and I watch him pretty frequently. And one of the things that I notice is that a lot of the things that my son David does, I did when I was a kid. A lot of the discomforts, the insecurities, the random noises that he makes throughout the day. Some of the key differences that there are between us is, number one, he is adopted, and number two, I didn't get caught. Right. So when I was younger, I was a much better liar than he is. Like when he's lying, he kind of does this, like his eyes kind of squint like this, and he starts to look off. And I think it's because I got I got more spankings whenever I was his, close to his age and younger. Uh, I just got better at lying, and so whenever there's a time where he is being dishonest or he's broken one of his devices or toys or something like that, like I immediately, because I know how much it cost, I know that it's going to be a while before he's able to get something else. I find myself getting really upset and frustrated and wanting to yell, and sometimes I do. But more often than not, I found myself thinking, "Man, I did that. I just hit it better." And you know, in the middle of me trying to be better, relationships begin to get more difficult. And everybody has like their things, right? Big moments in their life that like transform the way that they do things. And one of the big moments in my life was whenever my daughter passed away. Like it totally crushed my world, and I was in autopilot for like 10 years, to where it's not that I didn't love anybody during that period of time, because I absolutely did, but I just wasn't emotionally available, like in a genuine way, for about 10 years. Um, and, in some ways, uh, I was hoping to have like people that were willing to do the same thing that I've been doing with my kids and with my wife, which is put myself into their shoes. I was looking for somebody to do that for me during that time. Um, and I did a lot of blaming and silently frustrated about the fact that I felt so alone during that time, um, on other people. And don't get me wrong, uh, there's definitely ways that people who are in my life could have showed up better for me during that period of time. Uh, but the question that has been running through my head here recently is what if what if the problem was me? What if the problem was me? It it would be super easy for me to like blame and only blame everybody else for not showing up for me, even though I know for a fact that I showed up for other people. But what if the deep relationships that I was desiring weren't able to be accomplished because of the arrogance that the guy was telling me about? And again, I don't know 100% that he was correct on that. I think that I, in some capacity, I was arrogant in some ways, but it was out of a genuine place. Um, but I wonder, like, if I had a reached out one more time, if I had of taken the time to try to set myself aside, to remove myself from some situations, to place myself in other situations. Uh, and I think one of the challenging parts is that a lot of the ways that we're able to navigate through situations is based on our upbringing, is based on what we had access to. Um, and because of conversations that my parents and I have had, and family members and friends that I've had, like we had to have difficult conversations because nobody is nobody is born into this world with all the information at their access, that they need. it's something that you have to seek and pursue. And if you don't have access to it, then it's hard to be able to teach. But something that I was looking for could have been in some ways blocked by my effort put out, by my hurt of putting myself out there over and over and over again, and seemingly like I have been expressing my need without it feeling like it's being received, like the message wasn't being received. Like, what a part of it was my fault. And I might ask you the same question. Maybe your relationships are popping. Maybe your social capital is immaculate and it's great, and you've got people that you can depend on, and you can give a call at a whim. Maybe in the area of providing for your family, you're killing it. Maybe in your school, you are Stuco president, you are a quarterback, you are a top cheerleader, you are the captain of the chess team, whatever it might be. But there's still something that's kind of like missing. What I would encourage you to do is ask yourself, are you self-sabotaging? Sometimes what we can do is we can find ourselves in a comfortable place, sometimes even comfortable in dysfunction. We can find ourselves in a comfortable place where we have a little bit of control over certain things, and we're satisfied with that, but we like the idea of growth. We like the idea of success. We like the idea of healthy relationships. We like the idea of getting over divorces. We like the idea of working towards being healed from abuses and traumas, and feeling like a failure of a father or a grandmother or a daughter or a son or an aunt or an uncle. But we're not actually working towards a solution. We're just caught up in the cultural hype, where it's popular right now to see self-improvement. And so we quote all the mantras, but we're not actually working towards being better. And one of the biggest ways that you can find out if that's you, I feel like what I'm describing is kind of like an imposter syndrome. One of the best ways to be able to tell if that's you, if the problem is you, or if part of the problem is you, is by sitting and taking time to think about it, man. And not just sitting and thinking about it, but then also having tough conversations and going to say, hey, during XYZ time, these are some of the things that I was going through. I didn't feel like you were there for me. Or do you feel like, as we are close friends, that this is something that's true about me? And then the last thing that I would say is prayer. One of the things that scripture tells us is, if any of you lack wisdom, ask God and he will give it to you liberally. That means in abundance. And so you may not be somebody that follows Jesus. And if you don't, I'd encourage you to do it, man. And it's not just because it's going to make you a better person, even though it will, but it's because something my grandma used to say is, go to God about your life because he has the blueprint to your life. And so if you're trying to have something revealed to you with someone who judges the heart, it makes the most sense to go about seeking him to figure out what it is that you need to improve on and how to improve on that thing. Read some books. There's so many different ways that we can find ourselves growing better together. So, guys, I appreciate you tuning into this episode. I apologize if it feels like it was all over the place, but that was just some things that I had on my heart that I wanted to share with you guys. I'll look forward to the next episode, and you guys enjoy the rest of your day.